Joined now by Jeff Paterson, our Canucks reporter, of course, of rink-wide Vancouver after a 4-1 victory over the Montreal Canadiens at Rogers Arena, which sometimes sounded like the Bell Center last night. Jeff, how are you?
I'm doing well, and I think it would have sounded more so had Brendan Gallagher scored that breakaway right after the Canucks had the two early power plays. Casey DeSmith wasn't busy, but I would say that was his biggest save. Rick Tocchet certainly thought so after the game, and it could have been a momentum swing. I know it's been a tough season for Brendan Gallagher on the ice. His mother dealing with cancer. That is now public as well, so there's struggles off the ice too, but would have been a moment, obviously, for the former Vancouver Giant to come in and open the scoring, but wasn't to be. So give Casey DeSmith credit for doing the job yet again. And really from there, I mean, pretty solid. I don't know if you go masterclass because you have to consider the opponent, but holding Montreal just 17 shots and only 3 in the third period. You expected some sort of push there. And the Habs got 1 shot from a forward in the final period. 2 of their 3 shots came from defensemen. So pretty nice job by the Vancouver Canucks just holding that Montreal team at bay over the final 20 minutes and seeing a pretty thorough win through.
Or you can only do the lockdown third period against who's on the schedule. So you can't. But I mean, do you think that is a result of learned lessons of the last few games?
Yeah, I mean, there's enough of a parallel there that Colorado scored a last-minute goal in the second period to cut into a 3-0 lead at the time. That's the Avs. These are the Habs. So there are distinct differences. But yeah, I mean, the players referenced that after the game sort of unprompted, that they recognized that that's where the game against Colorado turned. They were determined to make sure that it didn't. Obviously, less firepower in this Montreal lineup. But yeah, I mean, I think so. And, you know, it's not a one-off because that's 2 games in a row now that they've held their opponents to 17 shots on goal. Whether it's that or Demko, whether it's Casey DeSmith, if Arthur Silov somehow found his way into the net, you'd like to think that anybody could get the job done if that's all the rubber that they're facing on a given night. So, again, Casey DeSmith can only stop the pucks that are coming his way from the opponent on the given night, as you mentioned, Blake, and he did his job, and I thought the guys in front certainly have stepped up here and done their job to help their
even the 24 shots surrendered to the Caps was not bad.
Right.
24 shots.
So, well, that begs the question. You brought his name up, not me. We thought maybe this week would be the Sheeloff spot if there is a Sheeloff spot. If this continues, do you think he gets that Anaheim game at the end of the month, at the end of the homestand?
That would be the one that you would continue to circle. I think with these rest days between games and the fact that the Canucks still haven't locked down anything, but they're creeping closer to getting that X beside their name for a playoff spot and still trying to distance themselves or at least hold off the Edmonton Oilers, that it's going to be Casey DeSmith for the foreseeable future. And guys, again, they haven't faced a ton of world beaters here, but 3-1-1 in his last 5 starts. He's given up 10 goals over that time. And since Demko went down, has more than held his own. So I think you just continue to roll him out here. They get Calgary, they get Los Angeles, the Dallas Stars come in. So there are going to be some challenges on the horizon. But yes, the finale of the 9-game homestand, if things continue to go well for the Canucks, I could see that an afternoon game that are sometimes a little squirrely for goaltenders with no morning skate and that kind of thing. That one possibly could be for Artur Silovs, but in the here and now, this is Casey DeSmith's net. He's doing his job and he's running with it, and so he'll get the start on Saturday against Calgary, and then I guess they will take it from there over the final week of that 9-game homestand.
Was that Nikita Zadorov's Mona Lisa as a Canuck?
2 goals is terrific. I joked on Twitter that I knew the Canucks had picked up a sniper from Calgary. I just didn't realize that it was the big defenseman. As they continue to wait for Elias Lindholm to break through offensively. But I like so much about the opening goal. His shot finds the back of the net, but Mikheyev has the presence to get that puck off the end boards. Lafferty standing his ground in front of the net. And that line certainly showed some signs of life. And then to see a 6'6" guy galloping up the ice the way that he did on that second goal. And again, Mikheyev, who is this guy? Where'd they get him? Right into the wheelhouse, and Zadorov makes no mistake. So, he had the Gordie Howe hat trick last week against Colorado. Looked like he was just going for the all-out hat trick this time around. But it is fascinating, guys, to me. And I know he's front of mind and needs a contract and all that kind of stuff. But on a night where the Canucks were in full control, they didn't have to lean on Quinn Hughes and Filip Hronek in the third period. He was still 5th in ice time among all Canuck defenders on a night when he was going, and he had 5 shots on goal and 2 goals. And if you look at his numbers for the season, he is 6th in ice time among Canuck defenders both at even strength and overall. And the surest way to know what coaches think of a player is by their deployment and their usage. And so this begs the question, like, is this how the Vancouver Canucks view Nikita Zadorov, a guy that can, step up and have a big game here and there, but there are still some weaknesses, some flaws, tries to do too much on a lot of nights, I find, runs himself into trouble. He's not Bobby Orr. They've got Quinn Hughes. Let Quinn do a lot of that. His job, first and foremost, should be to mind the shot, but he brings the physical element that they don't necessarily have elsewhere, especially without Dakota Joshua. And so there are a lot of reasons to like Nikita Zadorov. He's a good guy, honest, frank, speaks his mind, all those types of things. But ultimately, he's paid to defend, and this coaching staff just doesn't use him all that much. So where can you go with that? You just can't run into paying guys like that $5 million a season over the long haul if all they are is a third pairing defenseman.
Do you think you're answering no on our Tim Hortons poll question about 5.1 over 4, Jeff?
Yeah, that feels a little rich to me. Now, through no fault of his own, he's played himself to a position where this is a contract year for him and he wants to get paid. And I totally get that. And there's probably money for him somewhere. I just don't know that there's going to be money for him here. And this is the Vancouver Canucks now running into issues that other teams already have encountered. I mean, the Chicago Blackhawks won 3 Stanley Cups, but they had to keep retooling around their core because guys wanted to be paid, and you just can't do it in a flat cap world. And of course, the cap is going up, but you've got Oliver Ekman-Larsson on the books for 7 more seasons. And, there are some complications here with Filip Hronek and Nikita Zadorov, and how much is there to go around here ultimately? So I think it's important to, slot these guys into their proper places on the depth chart, and from there try to figure out, what are they worth? How much do you value what they bring to the operation here? And I just, again, it may be that Zadorov is the guy that ends up getting squeezed, because now, after so many years where like Bo Horvat and Brock Besser were, the big contracts on this team at 6.5 and 5.5, and then Paterson and Hughes got their bridge deals and moved ahead of them. But, now that we're into Petey with his big deal and JT Miller and, Zadorov, he falls behind Hronek. Obviously, they got to figure out the Filip Hronek equation here, but somebody's going to get squeezed. I mean, that's just the reality of today's NHL. And so we'll see where it goes for Nikita Zadorov.
Do you think Tocchet has found that groove for Zadorov in that spot, or do you think that the playoffs might change that? And it depends on who they face. I think a series versus the Preds looks very different than a series versus the Golden Knights. But, against the Golden Knights, assuming everybody's pretty healthy there, it's a bigger team, it's a heavier team. They know how to play in the playoffs. Does Zadorov become a more valuable piece, and does he get used more in a playoff?
Used more? I'm not sure. I mean, I think that they pretty clearly have their top pair. That those guys are going to play and play a lot. Carson Soucy back now. There's no doubt that that's the second pair if he's with Tyler Myers. They've done, and the coach wanted them to build out this big, strong, tall defense, and they've done that for him. Zadorov's going to be fascinating in playoff time just because he does bring that physical element and some intimidation. Takes a few too many penalties along the way, but so does Tyler Myers, and that's going to be something to watch as the Canucks move closer to the playoffs and ultimately into the postseason. But I'm with you. Like, is there sort of an untapped value of him and his physicality and his size come playoff time that maybe we don't see in his 17 minutes of ice time during the regular season? I suppose that I've got time for that conversation. And if he steps up and has a big playoffs, then, maybe that changes the outlook of the Canucks and other teams around the National Hockey League when it comes down to a new contract for a guy like Zadorov. I
almost wondered if they had that thought in the back of their mind when they traded for him. The reason we're talking about these 6 is because Ian Cole doesn't get in. Is that going to continue, do you think? Are we going to see is Myers going to take a turn sitting? He's missed some time, but everybody could probably use some rest down the stretch here, or is it always just going to be an Ian Cole because he's 35 years of age?
No, I thought there were some cryptic comments from Rick Tocchet after the game when he was asked if Zadorov's performance and even that of Juleson was a response to this notion of load management and, playing for your job and playing for your spot in the lineup on a nightly basis. I don't know that I can draw a through line there. I think Nikita Zadorov just took the opportunity when it was there for him to jump up and score a couple of goals. But I don't think he looked at the situation and said, I have to have a big night. But in saying that, Tocchet said, you guys might be surprised by who sits down next. Well, I don't think you're sitting down Hughes or Hronek. So, and Soucy's missed so much time and has been such a big part of the success of the team when he's in the lineup. So I think those three right now, game 82, that's a different equation. If everything's wrapped up, I could see them absolutely giving those guys a rest. But in the here and now, as they're pushing for the division title, it limits the options, doesn't it? And I think it does bring Tyler Myers into the equation here. I don't think it can always be Ian Cole. Like, how much rest in a month where they're at home and not traveling and they're all getting rest, like how much more rest does Ian Cole need than, he's only a year older than Tyler Myers. The birthdays were both in February. They're separated by a year. So, and then, you do wonder if it's going to touch a guy like Zadorov as well at some point, if you figure you can get through a night without the physical presence that he brings.
Hey, Jeff, when you say when they have it all wrapped up, do you know how much Tocchet in the organization value first in the conference or the President's Trophy? Like, do you think this is all about the division, or do you think they have sights and designs on those other two number one placements?
I think the division is the number one goal for the Vancouver Canucks, that they've worked so hard. They've built this massive lead. If I'm not mistaken, they were up by 19 over Edmonton just before Christmas. And we know what the Oilers have done, and yet all they've been able to do is chip away to get it to an 8-point bulge here. And this is a fascinating week, guys. The Edmonton Oilers are in Toronto on Saturday. So that's not going to be easy, but they can certainly beat the Leafs, but it won't be an easy game. Then they're in Ottawa, back-to-back on Sunday. Now, the Sens are the Sens, but it's back-to-back for the Oilers. 3-4 for them is in Winnipeg on Tuesday as they make their way back from the East. So there's some travel here. And then their fourth game in 6 nights is at home against the Los Angeles Kings. So that's not an easy week for the Edmonton Oilers. Canucks will be keeping an eye on the out-of-town scoreboard, but they've got to hold up their end of the bargain as well, right? With Calgary here on Saturday, and they can't look beyond the Flames. Interesting note, too, that I ran into Ryan Huska in the press box at the game last night. The entire Flames coaching staff, the Flames in town on a Thursday night ahead of a Saturday game. Mm-hmm. So coming in early, and Ryan kind of laughed and he said he told his guys to go have their fun on Thursday night and be ready for business on Friday and the game on Saturday. So I guess get it out of your system on the Thursday rather than the Friday night and make sure they're prepared to play on Saturday. Whatever the case, not an easy week for the Edmonton Oilers. And for the Canucks, look, they've come this far. They've been atop the division. I think by winning the division, you guarantee yourself not only home ice in the first round, but if you do get through the opening round, you're going to have it in round 2. And look at the Canucks record on home ice, 23-7-4. Like, they really have taken advantage of games at Rogers Arena this year. So I think, is there an appetite in this market for another President's Trophy? I would say no. Winning the conference would be a feather in their cap when nobody had them pegged there at the start of the season. But as it gets down to crunch time here with a dozen to go, I think it's all about doing everything in their power to ensure they hold off the Edmonton Oilers and then finish atop the Pacific Division.
Probably facing Jacob Markstrom on Saturday too, by the way.
Hey, we heard from Casey DeSmith and that he's finding his groove. We've talked about how he is about to get into some uncharted territory, or territory that he doesn't chart very often in terms of all the consecutive starts. And the other thing that we've seen here, and Saravelli talks about this often, when you're losing a star player, how the rest of the group sort of rallies to compensate for the lack of that star player with Thatcher Demko. But your update, what have you thought of Casey DeSmith here in his role as starting goaltender for the Canucks?
Yeah, and we talked about it a little earlier, just where the team is doing its job in front of him. They haven't made life difficult on him, really. I mean, yes, Colorado mounted the comeback, and would you have liked to save somewhere along the line? Maybe, but I mean, 2 of the goals on the power play, 4 on 3 in overtime. Like, I'm not pinning that overtime loss on Casey DeSmith at all. And then since then has bounced back, gave up just 2 against Washington in that 2-minute span. But, the Canucks at home should be able to overcome giving up 2 goals. They just couldn't score that night. But then against Buffalo and here against Montreal, just making the saves that he's supposed to. And again, I thought the save that he made on Gallagher in the first period of the breakaway was huge. And then Montreal started to get power plays in the second, and Cole Caulfield has scored some goals in the National Hockey League. He got a really good look directly out in front of the net. And DeSmith isn't the biggest guy in the world, but I thought he made himself look big, came out, challenged the shooter, looked confident, and made the stop that he was supposed to there, and that kept it at 2-0. And then the Canucks able to extend their lead to 3-0 a little bit later on there. So, the fact that we're even talking about, hey, maybe getting Artur Shilov to start somewhere along the line, the longer that Casey DeSmith continues to deliver for the Vancouver Canucks, I think it buys them time. On the Thatcher Demko front here, if there was any notion that the Oilers were creeping a little too close for comfort and, you needed to get your star goaltender back in there, they're not going to rush Demko back. But I think this takes away any sort of pressure to even consider that notion that DeSmith was brought in as an experienced, capable backup. Guy's 32. He's been around the block. He has held down the fort for stretches in the past in Pittsburgh, and he's doing it here right now. And he's going to have to do it again on Saturday against the Calgary Flames.
I'm not picking nits here. You celebrate that win. It was a nice win. But there are nights where they will need that power play thing.
Yeah.
And I actually quite liked it versus Buffalo, despite, mere dividends or small dividends. I thought for the most part, it was atrocious versus Montreal. Well, how do we explain what we're seeing here out of this group?
Yeah, I guess I was surprised that they went to the two defensemen set on the 5-on-3. Like, if you're going to have Filip Hronek out there on 5-on-3, I want to see him have 5 shots on goal. And if he takes out some ankles along the way, hopefully they're not friendly fire ankles, but he's out there and yet not utilizing that shot. Like, that's the only reason that he should be out there. And he fumbled the puck. I thought he was fighting the puck a little bit in the first period. Way too much perimeter stuff again. They only had 1 shot on goal in 1 minute and 6 seconds of the 5-on-3, and that was JT Miller on the doorstep, and it was a great chance, and it was one of Montembeau's better saves of the night. But those overlapping power plays, and what a gift to get a too many men on the ice penalty against Montreal when you're already on the power play. Like, yeah, put the hammer down. They got 2 power play shots on goal in that sequence, and one was from Podkolzin, who's on the second unit. So I'm with you. I thought maybe they had turned a corner or at least gained a little traction with the way they were zipping it around against the Sabres, and this felt like a big step back. Now, ultimately, they didn't need the power play, but they will need the power play in games ahead here. So it's tough to figure out. I also thought it was really curious, and we heard from Rick Tocchet after the morning skate that Elias Lindholm is playing through something. And I know Irf Gafar on Rinkwide suggested that it's an upper body injury at the very least. He had a tough night in the faceoff circle, which has not been the case for Lindholm, but he's not out there on that first unit. And that tells me, I wonder if the injury is enough that they recognize that he just can't hold his own offensively with the other best players in those situations. I know he's on the second unit power play, but you're trying to maximize, they really are a 1-unit team. And the fact that they're, back to Suter as the left shot guy, we've seen Garland there, but it is curious. And I was surprised this late in the season to hear Rick Tocchet even go there and sort of let the world know that Elias Lindholm is playing through something that's nagging him. But I guess maybe that explains a little bit of the lack of offensive production from him. But I did find it I just thought, why wouldn't you load up your best offensive players and get after it? But maybe they don't see Lindholm as one of their best offensive players right now.
I got 2 more questions for you, Jeff. The discussion we were having earlier in the week in terms of the best wingers for Petey and whether Höglander and Garland is the best way to go about it at this stage of the game, or because of the nice game and the better play from that Mikheyev fellow, do you go back there at any point?
Yeah, I'm not ready to elevate Mikheyev yet. I think he's still in timeout from the top 6. And look, Conor Garland, what a story. From a guy that it sounded like the team wanted to give away and a lot of people wanted to run out of town. And he's up to 15 goals. There's still a dozen games to play. 20 seems like a reach, but he's scored 4 in the last 8 games. And I was surprised when I was looking at this morning. Since January 1st, he's tied with Brock Besser for goals on this team. And he's got a dozen since January 1st and no power play goals among them. So, he does it in limited ice time. Nice shot last night, but a great feed from Teddy Bluger to spring him there. A little reunion with those two and the way that they played for much of December and January. I think you just, at this point, it's kind of like winning you're in. It's win and stick with the lineup. And Nils Amon probably buys himself another game with his first goal since Christmas. But yeah, I don't think that this is locked in stone over the final 12 and into the playoffs. And obviously, Dakota Joshua coming back will change that equation somewhat. But right now, Garland's winning his puck battles. He's hounding pucks.
The puck battle's unbelievable.
Holding the hot stick.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, that line's going. And even on a quiet night where none of the Canucks top 5 scorers hit the score sheet, I thought it was a step in the right direction, like some PD magic. That's all I'm asking for. Draws the Suzuki penalty with the dangle between his legs in the first period. Had that other one in the second where he made a couple of Montreal guys miss. Like, there was some traction there, I thought, for Elias Paterson, just in terms of looking like a confident guy that wants to take on players one-on-one and try and beat them, something that we haven't
The puck
seen.
is sitting for him, right? It wasn't sitting for him, and now it's starting to sit a little bit. It's nice.
Last question, Jeff. Vasily Podkolzin has opened his account in 23-24, an assist last night, his first point in 8 NHL games that he has played. He hits everything that moves. So I think we've seen Vasily Podkolzin get the message that I'm not going to be a scorer, so I better finish my checks and hit everything.
That face, don't you want to cheer for that face? He's so forlorn on the bench, even after you just want to. Oh,
what have you
good
made?
Boy.
What have you made of? What have you made of good boy Vasily?
Well, I thought he was a poster boy for do something last night. He played 10 minutes and 16 seconds of ice time. It's not about how much ice you get. It's what you do with it. And, he had the hits, as you said, and his hits leave a mark. Like, he's a big body, and he's starting to, I think, learn how to use his size effectively. And so he got into double digits in ice time the other night against Buffalo in the third period. They were trying to lock things down, and Rick Tocchet shortened the bench, and there wasn't a lot of fourth line ice time, so he didn't play much then. But yeah, I mean, the fact that they've moved him down to the fourth line, I think, recognized that maybe he was feeling a little bit of pressure to produce offensively in his return to the NHL, and that hadn't happened. And I think by slotting him lower in the lineup, they're just saying, get out there, be a physical force, separate guys from the puck, and that's how you're going to leave your mark. And if you continue to do that, then hopefully some good things will follow, and he gets an assist on the Nils Amon goal. It was gravy, it was insurance, but for those guys, I'm sure a little bit of a confidence boost as well. But the way that he's playing, I certainly don't see him coming out of the lineup. I'm not going to say that he's going to play every game, that there could be a game that they sit him down right now, but in the short term, he's doing his part to help this hockey club as well. So he's not hurting them defensively in any way, and he's getting out there and leaving his mark, and we'll see if he can do that against the Flames on Saturday night.
And we'll be listening a rink wide thereafter. Jeff, thanks for this. Catch up next week.
All right, guys, have a great weekend.
Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres and Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.